I'll do that again, and we can get this party started.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Institute for Leadership and Action's Ask a Student undergraduate research panel. We have a really great group of panelists here tonight. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing what they have to say about the research, as I'm sure you are as well. Do some brief introductions. My name is Robert DeMarco. I'm a senior here at Rutgers, and my major is social work, and my minor is criminal justice.
My name is Edward Knight. I am in the MSW program at Rutgers Camden.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Cruz-Stokes. I am a senior majoring in criminal justice.
And here are our esteemed panelists. Panelists, if you would like to introduce yourselves and touch on your area of research interest, why don't we go left to right, starting with Omar. So he doesn't look like Omar's in the room yet, so we can start with Kiyoshi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiyoshi Woods. I am a sophomore majoring in biology with a minor in chemistry. And a lot of the research I do involves neuroscience and pain research with Dr. Freed on campus.
Let's see, do we have Joseph? Looks like we don't have Joseph or Audrey either. So
I think Melanie actually pulled up the slideshow for tomorrow.
okay.
Commonality is Kiyoshi though. So she'll just pull up the
Okay. Because I think we have Dory, right?
yeah. The 13th one. I was confused on these two.
Or Doris. I'm
Sorry
sorry.
about that, everyone.
That's all right.
So for context's sake, we're hosting this panel twice, once this evening and once tomorrow during the free period, so that students with different schedules are able to engage. And it's April. We all know where we're at right now. So sometimes the wrong slide deck gets pulled up, and we roll with it.
Second time's a charm.
That's it.
There we go.
Okay. So let's see. I'm not seeing Shanila yet, so we'll start with, go ahead, Ange.
Hey everybody, I'm a senior majoring in psychology and gender studies, and my research primarily focuses on some gender differences. I do a lot of research around trauma, HIV, STD prevention, suicide risk prevention, things like that, with a focus on marginalized populations like the LGBT community, homeless populations, and so on.
All right. Sienna.
Hi, I'm Sienna. I'm a junior biology major, and my research focuses on photoperiodism in Neurospora crassa and trying to find the genetic mechanism that the fungus uses to measure daylight.
And finally, Dory.
Hi everyone, so my name is Dory Zhang, but my friends call me Dory, so please feel free to do that. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm currently a senior biology major with minors in chemistry and business administration in the 5-year BS MBA program. I know there's a lot of sort of weird text on the screen about what my research is about, but essentially my research is very computational based at the moment. Because I'm not able to return to lab due to coverage restrictions, but essentially we're trying to computationally detect the presence of SNP mutations, and I am currently at the moment working with the B117 COVID mutation. But looking forward to speaking with everyone.
We're looking forward to hearing you. So with that, I'm going to shut up and we're going to pass it off to Eddie, who's going to begin with our panel questions.
Thank you, Rob. Just a little disclaimer here. There's not a rigid order we're going to go in. If anyone feels inclined to share, if not, I'll call on someone first. The panelists can just build on what someone else said, add to, offer counterpoint, anything of that nature. So with that being said, I'm going to get started with the first question. As someone who did not get involved in undergraduate research, how did you guys get connected to your research opportunity? So first, I'll throw it to Dory.
So great question. My research kind of didn't start at this institution. I think my research journey started at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. For those of you, I'm not sure if you've heard of like REUs, which are essentially research opportunities for undergrads. And so I started with that to get my door in, I guess, here, because that gave me more experience. But right now I'm in Dr. Fu's lab. He's a biochem teacher here at Rutgers. And essentially I talked to him as my professor, and that's how I was able to get in. So I really think, connecting with the professors and talking about their research is really important in getting a step in the door, because if their research is something that intrigues you, I'm pretty sure they're more than happy to talk with you about it and see if it works into your schedule and I guess your future career opportunities.
Thank you, Dory. Real quick, Shanila has joined us, so I do want to give her a chance to introduce herself and say hi to everyone. So Shanila, you can go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shanila, and I am a junior urban studies major here at Rutgers. Were we introducing anything else, like maybe any like research experience, or was that it?
Everyone just offered like a brief couple words of like what their research entailed. But you can actually loop that in. I'll single you out since you're already talking now. So you can answer the first question and kind of loop that in. So how did you get connected with your research opportunity?
So I did research through the summer research. Sorry, my cat is in the way, but I did research through the summer research opportunities program at the University of Iowa back in the summer of 2019. And I did research around the color conventions and which were, I have to kind of explain them, but the color conventions were conventions that Black people put together around the time that slavery ended to just talk about the well-being of Black people and the state of Black people around that time. So I did my research around Black faith-based organizing during the color conventions.
All right, thank you for that. Sorry to single you out, but you were already getting ready to go. So does any other panelists want to kind of address this question? I know the first two panelists mentioned, they got started at different schools in a sense. So does anyone have a similar or contrasting experience with that?
So for me, funny enough, I was in a class with Dr. Freed, and I really just talking about my previous research experience that I did in high school. And we kind of just like talked on and off. And then we didn't talk for about 9 months. And then COVID hit, and then I didn't have any classes with them. So I scheduled just an office hours meeting with him, and it led into a 2 to 3 hour conversation about just everything. And then he said, "Hey, are you doing anything this summer?" I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Okay, well, do you want to do a research program with me?" And he had me apply. I got in, and then it led into this big project where I'm now going to be the head of his lab for the senior member. And it just became this snowball effect that really happened. So it turned from a casual conversation, just talking about the X-Men, to being able to do this in his lab. So it was really a thing that I didn't really expect to happen, but just by knocking on his door, it all worked out.
All right, so thanks you for sharing. So there's another example of just reaching out to a professor. So Ange, did you have a similar experience to that, or was yours a little different?
Yeah, mine was a bit similar. I was actually a sophomore in Dr. Abeda's research methods class, and he had advertised that the psychology department had several independent studies that they were looking for students to join. So the psychology department actually has like a list on their website of faculty who have their own research labs and the type of research they do. So I got in contact with Dr. Kavanaugh because I was interested in her research. So I've been a member of her lab for 2.5 years now, so quite a while, but yep, I reached out myself.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Sienna. So Sienna, how did you get connected to your research opportunity?
So in my freshman year, I just went through the research shadowing like applications, and then I just got connected to Dr. Lee's lab. So I've been working in his labs ever since then.
All right, so thank you all for sharing that. I think a big takeaway from that is don't not ask. Most of you guys reached out to teachers. If not, you had prior experience and then you came in and you still got in contact with professors. So that's definitely a big key here. So with that being said, we're going to transition now into some benefits that you guys think you received from this research. So they could be personal, professional, excuse me, social, or just other things you want to touch base on. So I'm going to invite Ange to go first, if you don't mind.
Sure. I think this is the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from my research experience is that I am so much of a better candidate for graduate school. I've had experiences with programs and softwares that I had no familiarity with and have a better sense of research literacy. And I've also had opportunity to involve myself in professional conferences like ISTSS and the APA conference, as well as Circa last year. So on top of those experiences, as well as working on papers to get published, my CV looks amazing compared to before I got involved in research. So I feel like a much stronger candidate for when I'm applying to graduate school.
Thank you for that. Loading that resume, it definitely stands you out from other people, applying for graduate school or even in a professional sense, applying for a job once you do graduate. So that is definitely something very relevant to our discussion. So now I'm going to go to Sienna, if you don't mind sharing some benefits that you've experienced as well.
Yeah, so I found that working in the lab has given me a lot more like lab experience, like skills, like learning how to do different procedures in the lab, because I also plan on going to graduate school. So a lot of graduate schools like require you, like if you're going to get a PhD, to have like research experience. So I think that this was something that I learned through this. Yeah.
Definitely, it sounds like that's kind of a necessary stepping stone to kind of where you want to go. So it's necessary to be well versed, just so you can keep going to the goal that you want to reach in the end. So now, Kiyoshi, what benefits do you think you've kind of encountered?
So similar, to that resume packing, I went from not really having anything on my college resume, because switching from freshman year, going from the high school resume to the college resume was really drastically different. So being able to have a loaded amount of things to add to the resume in like one summer, and like things from like software applications to being able to like leadership, professional development, it really helped out a lot. And being able to kind of continue that and going from being just an observer in a lab to actually running your own project and hopefully heading something that is yours, that you can own and you can communicate effectively, which is I think is really important, being able to communicate that. So that is definitely something I've learned. It's also given me a great personal connection with Dr. Freed. I can text him whenever I need something, and he's always there for me about any other classes, or if I have a question about, how should I word this to a professor, he's always there for me on that. And just even in classes as well, being able to talk about being able to maximize my credit load and being able to kind of strategically pick classes that will help me in my field for grad school is going to look really good, and it's going to help me out a lot in that regard.
Definitely sounds like sense of independence in research, and definitely networking was a big help for you. And I feel like most of the panelists can echo that as well. I'm gonna single out Dory now. What benefits have you experienced? Anything similar? Anything you want to add on?
Yeah, I think the panelists covered a lot of the benefits, but when I think about my research experiences, I think I've had sort of two very different ones. One was during the summer where I was like fully immersed. I was basically working full time in a lab. So, I lived at UMass in one of their dorms, and it was day in and day out in the lab, working on your own project, putting together a paper, and really sort of being autonomous in that sense. I think now when I'm in Dr. Fu's lab, I'm very much gaining the same connections. We're working on something really exciting, hoping that we can publish that soon. We're working on a manuscript to publish this summer. And so I think, in addition to resume building, in addition to networking, meeting so many of your peers, meeting people that potentially could be in the same field in who knows how many years, right? PhDs take a long time to complete. But I think I've also made a lot of friends, people that, probably after when I'm in my MD PhD program that I can connect with, colleagues for the future. But I don't think my life would be the same without doing research. And so I really encourage everyone that wants to do research to try to explore it. It never hurts to ask and never hurts to try to get your foot in the door.
That sounds good. Thank you for bringing to kind of the social benefits, making those friends, because you never know what can happen in the future, or, you need to reach out to someone that you connected with through research. It's definitely very relevant. So lastly, we're going to go to Shanila about any benefits that you've experienced.
Yeah, kind of on the professional / social networking aspect. So my research program was kind of like a holistic program in the sense that we got GRE prep, and while I was there, I took advantage of being, because I'm an urban studies major, so I wasn't particularly doing research in my field. It was more of African American studies and history. So I took advantage of just being on that campus, and I was reaching out because I know I want to go to grad school, so I was reaching out to the professor, the director of the urban planning program there, and we connected. And ever since I've left that program, every month I just meet and I talk with him just to check in. So he's actually become a mentor now. So yeah, just it's kind of just like what everyone else is saying, just reaching out and just taking hold of the opportunities that you have when they're at hand.
That sounds good. Dory threw something in the chat.
Yeah, just a really quick mention, I want to go and pursue my MD PhD. And actually my PI from the experience that I had 2 summers ago is on the admissions committee. So he's giving me, feedback and sort of the ins and outs. And, I've asked him, am I a good candidate at that? I think at the start of this year, I asked him, would I be a good candidate? And he's already said yes. And so it's just sort of reassurance, and you never know what connections other people may have. And I think that's the best thing about networking, because you're not only accessing, your direct network, but you're accessing other people's network as well. And I think that's just really valuable.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you all for the insight. It seems like the major theme across all the responses were, that networking and being able to rely on and reach out to someone, whether it's just for advice on admissions for graduate school, or even further things of that nature. It's definitely helpful. So with all those benefits kind of being experienced, there's nothing is ever just stress-free or challenge-free in a sense. So now I kind of want to touch base on any challenges that came your way, and how you dealt with them. So you could just tell us briefly what you had the challenge, and then, or what challenge you had, and then how you went about fixing it. So I'm going to go to Kiyoshi first.
Yeah, so I guess challenges, I think it goes along with our question that you'll be asking is the balance. I think the balance that of having to kind of just being able to keep everything on the plate without having it fall off is really important, because you got to stay committed to everything that you're involved in and stay on top of your grades. And you have to stay committed to your research, and the point that it won't sorry, let me backtrack. Yeah, it's just really just trying to find the balance and being able to put more research, keep in mind you may have to put in more research one week than another, and then having to try to kind of keep that that balance in play, because trying to balance so many credits that whatever credits you're taking, if you're taking labs in addition to that, you're always going to be always working. And it's gonna be a little bit different back on campus. Definitely it's a little bit easier, I would say, or a little bit more flexible in an online environment, because I don't have to run around physically. I can kind of just hop in and out of Zoom lectures. But it's definitely, that's probably the biggest challenge, is just trying to find a commitment and being able to stick with it, and but being able to also recognize that it's going to be hard. You have to make a lot of sacrifices, and I think a lot of people that I know don't really recognize that until they really get into it, because they're like, oh yeah, no, I'll balance it. I'll balance it. I'll work in my schedule. But it gets gonna be a lot harder when you're at campus 8 9 p.m. trying to like run around doing different things for your research. So that's, I guess that's what I can say is like the biggest challenge of, is just realizing that early on.
And I definitely appreciate you bringing some light into like other questions, because that, that's kind of the point of the conversation. We kind of want to link all these things and just really get into, how others can navigate, balance their time, things of that nature. So I definitely appreciate that. Next, I'm going to go to Sienna. Any challenges you had and kind of how you went about it?
Yeah, so my first semester that I was doing research, I found it kind of hard to like balance like doing my research work and also doing classes. So I would just kind of like communicate with my professor like on those weeks where you have like everything due and like a test in every class, like everyone has that sometimes. So I just communicate to my professor like I won't be able to do that much research this week, but like I'll catch up next week. And like I think communication is like a really important part of like getting through your challenges in research and just finding the balance between school and research. And then after like you find your balance, it gets easier and you can like more focus on research and school at the same time easier.
Thank you. I appreciate, you kind of sharing the same sentiment as Kiyoshi. I'm going to go to Ange now. Did you, is your experience kind of similar, or do you have any other challenges that you kind of want to shed light on?
I can kind of echo what the other panelists said in saying that time management is huge in taking on the task of being involved in research and also being a student. And I'm sure many of you have jobs outside of that, social lives, other priorities in your life. So weighing out where your energy and effort is going to go is really important. And one thing that I do, I'm the opposite of a procrastinator. I love to get things done ahead of time. So I kind of try to set deadlines for like mini accomplishments rather than like I have this whole research paper I have to write. I'll set a deadline to finish the intro. And so kind of breaking things up in that way is a good way to manage time with so many things going on.
And I think Dory kind of shares some other, like definitely my opinion. I don't know how that's kind of possible.
I don't know how either, but
but
that is the way it is.
Some people just have those skills and some people have to work on them. It's how it is, but I feel like it's something that we can accomplish. So that's great that you brought that up. Excuse me, now I'm going to go to Shanila if you want to talk about any challenges, time management, things of that nature as well.
I'm trying to think back because my program was a couple years ago. I really honestly didn't have any challenges, but can I say something that I love to do?
Go for it.
Something that I loved was just being able to like, because I did research more in like the social sciences, because it was more history based. So I really love like being able, because I was in like Iowa and like some of the conventions took place there. So I really love being able to like travel around the state, just like looking for certain like artifacts or like, because we had to find like specific details. So I just really love traveling to be able to find those things. And there are these like things, I think they're called microfilm, and you kind of like put them in this machine and you get to like see like files. It's kind of hard to navigate, but I just love like actually being able to physically touch things, because I guess a challenge that I had, I'm more of a person who likes to move around and kind of like switch environments. So that's why I love to travel so much and like not be as behind the computer as much. So I really like being able to touch the stuff like microfilm and kind of like use pencil and paper to jot stuff down. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because I was going to say, with all that traveling and trying to find all the different stuff, that's a challenge in and of itself, going about research in that manner, that hands-on experience is it's definitely challenging. It seems it to me at least. Lastly, we're going to go to Dory. Any challenges that you've encountered through your research?
Yeah, definitely. I think my colleagues have made really good points on the time management side and, balancing, I guess, work and school life. But I think the challenge that I want to highlight is that research is really frustrating. Like, it really builds resilience because you will spend weeks on something and then it doesn't turn out, right? You have to change path, and it's like, well, did you waste all that time? And I think even with with grad school in mind, and there's a rush to get published, or there's a rush to do something productive and contribute something to the scientific world. But I think it's like important to remember you're there to learn. Like, research doesn't take months, it takes years, like literally years. And so just to be engaged in the moment, learn the skills that you can, and not focus so much on the result, but more on just the journey to get where you want to be. I think that's a really hard lesson to learn. And I think those that want to get into research need to know that, because it's infuriating sometimes.
I think I'm sorry to cut. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go for
I
it.
guess to go off that, I think the biggest thing for me is don't do things to check off boxes. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that, any type of grad school, they'll see right through if you're just doing stuff just to do it and say you do. Because having the difference between someone that's just doing research to say I did research, and then have someone that's really invested in their project, to have someone that's really passionate, that can give you the ins and outs, that's going to hit a lot harder. But it's more meaningful. You're not going to be happy if you're just checking off boxes, and because you're just going to be running around doing a million things that don't really care to you. But having like something small that you really care about is going to make me a lot more. And that's something that really took me a long time to learn, because I'm just the kind of person that would say yes to everything, thinking, let me just add everything to my resume. But it's those small, meaningful things that really count, that they're going to make the difference in the long run.
I definitely feel like that's a life lesson in general. But it definitely applies to research, and what Dory said, the frustration is real. I get frustrated off of, little research that you have to do for an 8 to 10 page paper. So yeah, I admire the things that you guys do, because I don't know how I could, but I want to thank you guys for all your responses. I'm going to throw it to Milani now. We do have a couple more questions here, so she's going to ask those as well.
Thank you. So I know we talked a little bit about this in the previous question with, Dory talking about enjoying the process and the experience of it, and then Kiyoshi discussing, not being a yes man or a yes woman or a yes person. So I wanted to ask the panelists, what other best practices would you suggest for engaging in undergraduate research? And I can start it off with Shanila.
I would say best practice. I would say just to know that there are like different ways that you can engage in research in undergrad. Because I know, well, I think that like REU and like the program that I did, the summer research opportunities program, are like summer programs. I know like for me, like I have to work during the school year, so there's no way that I'm gonna do research and like take classes and work. So like know that there's like summer research programs where you don't have to worry about school, and some of them actually pay you. Like mine paid me to like go away and actually do research. And then you can also look into like independent studies, which you actually get credit for, and it counts as a class. So you don't have to worry about like doing that on the side. So you have independent studies, summer research programs, and there's just know that there's like different ways to do it. So if like the norm, just like doing it under a professor during the school year.
I think we lost Shanila there. I'll give it a few more seconds to see if she comes back. Shanila, you cut out. We couldn't hear what you said at the last part.
What was the last thing that you heard?
You were talking about doing independent studies. And then you cut out.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that so just know that just like no, there's nothing wrong with doing research with a professor in addition to like classes and work, but just know there's other options out there if that doesn't fit your schedule, such as like independent studies or like summer research programs.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you make there. And I think one of the misconceptions is that when we think about undergraduate research, we always assume that it's being in a lab, dissecting a pig or doing something like that. But it doesn't always have to consist of that. Research is such a huge umbrella that consists of many different areas, many different fields. And so it's just really a matter of finding something that interests you and just pursuing that. So you did make a great point of, seeking out independent study opportunities, because those can also be opportunities to, partner up with professors and do research. I'm going to kick this question to Sienna now.
Okay. I would say a good practice is just be willing to learn anything that your mentor wants to teach you in the lab, even if like, I know like a lot of things when you first start out, like new procedures are really difficult to learn. But I think that you should just stick with it and try to learn as best as you can, because you will eventually get better at it and it will be very beneficial for you like in the future if you join another lab or if you want to go to grad school or any school after this.
Great point. Angela?
So I guess for best practices, I would say to really apply yourself. There's a lot of different ways you can involve yourself in research. I know Rutgers, like you can just participate in research to get a sense of what that environment is like and give yourself the opportunity to ask more questions, as well as, join independent studies or a research lab and become, part of that team. But really like pushing yourself to go above and beyond is the way to, for me at least, the way that I've gotten the most out of my experience in research. I remember when I first met with Dr. Kavanaugh with my interest to join her lab, she had told me, most students don't publish a paper, they're just a member of my lab. They do like I'm sorry, I'm struggling to speak, literature reviews and things of that sort. And now I'm the student who went above and beyond, and I've published papers with her and have, presented at conferences, which that isn't the typical experience. So really pushing yourself to get the most out of what you're doing will benefit you the most.
Thank you. I think that's also really important. Going back to what we, were discussing earlier of just enjoying the process and enjoying the journey. And if it's something, that you're not really passionate about and not really interested in, then, you got to ask yourself, why are you participating in this undergraduate research? So I think you made a really good point there. Dory?
Yeah, I really want to echo what everyone has said. I think that there's so much truth to everything. But the thing that I want to add is that you really have to put in the time. Like research is not something that you can say, oh yeah, I'm just going to dip my toes in and see how I feel. Like, no, if you're going to commit, you have to put in the hours, you have to put in the work. Because a lot of things are, trial by error. You have to read countless and countless number of papers. You're going to not understand so much of the language. And so you need to be willing to put in the effort and put in the time.
Yep. And that just goes back to when we were talking about having that balance between, personal life, academic life, and, undergraduate research. So thank you for sharing. And then Kiyoshi.
I guess the one thing I can say is have one of these. So this is my planner and I can't live without it. Like I go from any, like, it'll be filled to the brim 24/7. I balance everything from personal to work. It's so important because, I also use this thing called Todoist. It's a website that you can just sign up and you can put your to-do list and it kind of motivates you to get through it. Having that, proper time management, being able to balance everything, because I can't tell you how many times I have forgotten a meeting, especially in the Zoom world. And I'm trying to rush 10 minutes late and I'm so sorry. I can't do it. So it's definitely, I always make plans and I know you can use online planners. I personally like a in-person planner, like in my hands, because it allows me kind of have a better sense of it, but you can clearly use a calendar or anything like this. And it just works. I can't say there's any bad sides to it. Like there's no downside. It helps you in every aspect of your life, because I turn it into a first come first serve now. That if somebody asks me to do something, I'll put it in my book, and if somebody asks me that same day, I'll say no, I'm sorry, I'm blocked. So that kind of also helps with the yes man or the yes person. Because the big thing is I've had myself saying yes and then turning out that those two times conflict. So that's such a big thing that you kind of have to keep an eye out for. So I guess that, and then like I said before, learning to say no, because I'd rather say no and be realistic with my expectations of myself rather than saying yes and stretching myself too thin, and also letting other people down in that term.
Thank you. And I think that's such a big life lesson in general, is to always keep a planner, whether it's a physical one or electronic calendar like Google Calendars, because I'm the type of person that has a Google Calendar, and I also have, the physical one. So thank you for that. Our last question had to deal with how do you create that balance between personal life, academic life, and your undergraduate research. But we also talked about that, and you all kind of answered that earlier. So I actually want to try to change the last question, and I want to pose to you all. What would you suggest as first steps for a student who wanted to get involved in undergraduate research? And I'm going to kick it over to Sienna for this one.
Okay. I would say if you have a professor whose subject matter really interests you, you could go to them and see if they have a lab, or if that they know someone within the same field that has a lab that would accept undergrad researchers. Because I know there's a lot of professors that are looking for undergrads to help with their research and stuff. So I think that would be my first step.
Thank you. Kiyoshi?
I say don't be afraid. Rutgers Camden is a primarily undergraduate serving institution. So this is the perfect place to get started and really find people that you can connect with. I'm hearing people that go to bigger universities saying, yeah, I hope to get in with a grad student at my school. When here you can just get to know the actual professor that's teaching everything. Another thing is, when you ask, look up your professor. Whenever I would send out an email to a professor, I would look through their research, see what I like. And because that also a big step is if you actually enjoy their research, because you may not enjoy their research just trying to get into a lab and you're going to be miserable the entire time. So just definitely read through their profile, read their papers, see if you actually enjoy it. And then that actually helps your email or in-person conversation, because if you talk about their own research, it's a big, big plus to the professor. And saying yeah, well, this person's really interested. They know exactly what I'm talking about. They know exactly what I'm researching about. This person would be a good fit. And, worst comes to worst, they would have you shadow their lab, which isn't bad at all. Shadowing is a really good first step. There's no con to the professor for having someone shadow and watch. So that is a really good point to actually network in itself. So one, I guess, would just say is reach out to the professor. Don't feel nervous. Professors, I think that's the big thing, is people are really nervous about reaching professors. Don't be. They're human, just like you and me. So doing that, reading up about them, and just be invested in what they're talking about. That's all I can say.
All right, thank you. Angela?
Kind of similarly, I wanted to talk about being passionate about what you're doing. I know for me, I work in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion on campus, so I'm very familiar with the relationship between marginalization and trauma, and my research focuses on just that. So I don't really have to shift gears when I go from from work to the lab or to class. Even things are kind of in the same realm, and I'm passionate about it. I enjoy doing it, and it doesn't feel as much of a difficult task to me, because I feel like I'm advancing my community, advancing research, and that has some personal benefits to me. I feel accomplished in some way because this is a personal care of mine.
Thank you. Shanila?
Yeah, kind of going off of Ange, I would say I have a two-part answer. So I would say try to find something that you love, and that they were saying research could be anything. So try to see if like there's people out there that kind of do that research. So for example, I'm really interested in like festivals and just like pop-ups. And in like urban studies, there's actually research around that. So I can like apply for a program and do research on that. But if you say you don't want to commit to like doing a full program, I would say if you have like an opportunity to do a paper in class, maybe just try to focus your paper on that in class. For example, because you don't even know, like, well, I'm all over the place, sorry. You don't even know, like, your paper could be good enough to get picked to like, what's the word? To present your research at like Kirka. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so even like that's not really a small thing, but if you're not willing to commit yet to like doing a full program or doing it under a professor, you can even try to like just focus your papers or a few papers on like your point of interest.
All right, thank you. And lastly, Dory.
I think everyone has already said a lot of fantastic things. I'm going to try to find something that's different. I think for me personally, diversifying my research experience was really important. Like I mentioned, I didn't start here, and honestly, my REU experience was just phenomenal. I miss all my friends. Like I now have friends literally all over the world, just from that one experience alone. But don't be afraid to explore opportunities outside of Rutgers Camden too. I know we've talked a lot about Rutgers Camden, and it is very important to have sort of a local opportunity that you can, pursue year round. But I think if you can even engage in summer research at a different university or in a different environment, I think that is also really beneficial too. And I got in my sophomore year. So like there's sort of no age limit for getting in, and in turn that experience helps you get into a lab here, and so I really would encourage everyone to explore the different opportunities available, and to broaden your scope, because research, it's not just this straight path, it's not just this one story for everybody. Everybody has a different story, and I really encourage you to find your own or write your own.
Thank you so much, Dory. I think that was a really, really great answer that you gave, and just, enjoying the process, and that there is no straight path, because there's plenty of people who, started doing research their senior year or their junior year. It doesn't really matter. And I also think that you made a really important point too, is that, undergraduate research doesn't necessarily have to only be confined within the university, that it could also be, different summer opportunities. There's plenty of different programs and fellowships out there that, focus on research that you can get involved in. So I think that's also, a great resource to utilize when you're seeking out those opportunities, if you decide that you want to branch out beyond the university. So thank you all for giving such thoughtful and well intuitive answers. Now I want to open it up to the audience to see if they have any questions that they would like to pose to the panelists. And you can either unmute yourself or feel free to post it in the chat.
I have a question. My name is Inbar. I'm an international student, but also I just transferred from a community college of Philadelphia to Rutgers. This is my junior year, and I'm psychology major. And I'm very interested in getting experience in research, but I'm afraid I'm not a good candidate because language gap maybe, and also like I don't know a lot of professors on campus because the past year. So I wanted to see if you have any tips to the first interaction with the professors. What should I prepare before I even like have any conversation with professor about research?
If I could speak on this, I'm a psych major, so I'm right where you're going to want to be. But I just emailed Dr. Kavanaugh when I found out about what her lab focuses on. I said, I introduced myself, what year I am, what my personal interests are, and that I was interested in meeting her and potentially joining her lab. And we set up an individual meeting where we discussed kind of my interests and what my goals are for participating in research. And I'll also say that we have 2 members of our lab whose first language is not English, and there is like a language barrier there, and we make do just fine. So I don't think that, I think Rutgers Camden is very accommodating of things like that. We have a lot of international students, so I think you'll have an easy time just looking through the psychology department faculty website. They list their research interests, and if you find something that aligns with your own interests, just email them and let them know that you're interested, you want to get involved in whatever capacity that may be, and I think you'll be successful that way.
And if
Thank you very much.
And if I can jump in, I think Yoshi touched on this earlier, but it's important to read up on the research a little bit, right? When you send out a cover letter, when you send out a letter of interest, you don't want it to be this sort of copy and paste as if it could apply to any professor in the department. You'd want to, cater it and be a little more personal, so that, again, like Kiyoshi mentioned this already, but that they see that you're passionate about what they're researching, right? Why their lab? Why are you picking them out of everybody else? And it's okay to be inexperienced. Like, I think everyone started out that way. Someone had to take a leap of faith in you based on, the interest and the passion that you were demonstrating. And so don't be scared. It never hurts to reach out, right? So what if they say, maybe next semester or something like that, but get your foot in the door as quick as you can.
Thank you so much for posing a great question and for the wonderful answers. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask?
Am I allowed to ask one? I'd like to ask one.
Of course, Michael.
And so I was, as a planner possessor myself, like, it warmed my heart to hear everybody talk about time management, and somebody who's interested in employment for our graduates, like it was great to hear you talk about professional development, right? I'm wondering, what are some of the other, I'd say, more personal lessons that you might have learned about yourself through research, right? Because I think you did a wonderful job of describing some, like, let's say, outcomes. But what would you think of as incomes? Like, how have you been shaped internally by participating in these types of activities?
So I think for me, fighting imposter syndrome is probably the #1 experience for me. Coming into a university from, it's going from like I went to like a smaller high school. So basically, being big fish in a small pond, going out into like a bigger area. It's definitely, you see all these people that are extremely motivated, and it kind of gets in your head when you're seeing everyone do things, and you're thinking, man, I'm not doing that. I should be thinking about something like that, even though you're discounting everything that you're doing already. So I think that's the big thing, is being able to realize that what you're doing incredible things, and you're doing things that not many people are doing, but just because other people are doing other great things doesn't mean it discounts what you're doing. And I think that, and perseverance is really, really big. And it's what it's taught me is, when I was in high school, everything worked out the first time, everything was great. And I think when I first got to a research project over the summer, it wasn't the case. It was irritating. It was frustrating having all my flies die on me, because I was doing everything in my room. I had about like 500 flies in my room, and my parents didn't want it at first. So it was outside. I didn't realize that flies don't do well in heat, even though I just assumed that natural flies did well. So I came back to it's like my shed, and all of them are dead. So I was freaking out, trying to figure everything out. And so just problem solving and being able to just kind of bounce back quickly and effectively is really important. And that, it's a funny story now, but back when it was first happening, it was, it was a big issue. So it definitely, helps form who you are now. And definitely during COVID, it's hard to have those connections with other people, but being able to still effectively do what you're doing online is an achievement in itself.
Kind of in a different route. Research has really taught me that I do not want to be a researcher my whole life. My goal is to be like a clinician, and obviously, research informs that and informs practice. And so I will be involved, especially in psychology. There's not much you can do to get around research. So I will be involved in research my whole life, and having this experience has increased my passion for that. But I am not a researcher, in my blood. That's not in me. I don't want to have a desk job. I want to, sit in front of patients. And so that's kind of helped me guide what my career aspirations are and what avenues I'm going to take to get there.
Angela, hopefully you can do both, right? That it doesn't have to just be one or the
Yeah.
other, but that you're able to practice both. Something else to add is just, I think it trains a lot of your important and essential skills in life, right? Like Kirshi mentioned, perseverance, communication's a big one, just being able to work with other people. You hone in on a lot of your lab skills. And so I think Angela made a really good point that, you figure out what you want to do and you figure out what you don't want to do. If you figure out that you really like research, but maybe not the topic so much, that then you can now pursue a different avenue and just really keep learning as you're growing. And you learn to sort of hop over obstacles and not let something just stop you, because you don't get a chance at that. You just have to keep going and bouncing back. And so yeah, like here she said, perseverance, but I think resilience is a big one.
Yeah, I would say that I learned that I could do more than I thought I could do, because when you first start in the lab, like you don't really know what's going on at all, and you like try to learn from papers and from other people in the lab. It's really difficult when you don't understand like the technical like language that everyone uses. So I think just like continuing to try, like you'll eventually get better at it and like succeed in learning more. So yeah, I just think that like not giving up on like yourself and like your learning, I think that's important.
I think to go off of that is, learning to not be afraid. When I was in high school, I reached out to a professor at Cooper Medical School. I was like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Can I please just like watch you? And she's like, actually, why don't you work with me? So I did some work with her, and I was her first ever person like working in her lab, because she was like a brand new professor. And I'm expecting, just to be washing dishes or just watching. And she's like, okay, we're gonna be doing Western blots. We're gonna be doing mRNA extractions. We'll be doing all these other things. And I'm like, so, and I was scared because I had, $10,000 plus technology like at my fingertips, like that could just, if I put tubes in the wrong way, it could just disrupt the entire thing and destroy it. And I remember I did that once and started making this loud rattling noise, and I was freaking out because of it. So, I was emailing her, like, I'm so sorry, I don't think I'm good enough for this. And she's like, don't be afraid. It's okay. Like, we all make mistakes. And that's definitely something that I've had to learn is, don't, it's going to happen. You're going to mess up, but don't be afraid of that, because those mistakes and those issues define who you are later on.
Shanila, did you want to add anything?
I didn't have anything to add, no.
Okay. Well, we are almost out of time, and I think that was a great way to end this event. So I do want to give a round of applause to our panelists and thank them so much for being with us today and sharing their experience. And I think the most important takeaways from this conversation is just enjoying the process, whether it be, for professional or for personal development. Getting involved in undergraduate research doesn't have to be, your forever end point. It could be for many people, but doesn't also have to be for other people. And so I think, getting involved, whether you're a freshman or whether you're a senior is really important, because it's really going to shape, and it could shape, a different path and, your future endeavors after you leave Rutgers. So again, I want to thank the panelists for being here today with us. Ed, do you have any last remarks that you'd like to share, or Rob?
Sorry, I just want to thank everyone as well. I know, as Michael mentioned before we started, it's a Tuesday afternoon, now it's 6 p.m. So I really appreciate everyone responding to Robert I's emails. I think this was great. I definitely learned a lot having no real background in research. So I definitely appreciate all the insight that everyone had. Just thank you guys for coming out. And if you guys are free tomorrow and you want to learn about some new experiences, we're hosting it again tomorrow. I think Kiyoshi's on that as well again. I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll get him again. So we'll be here tomorrow during free period as well. Thank you guys.
And you already got a preview of who's going to be speaking tomorrow. So
I would like to thank everyone as well.